Alrighty, I saw this on the InfoWars video. White woman shackled with chains at Black History Museum. Brace yourself. Cringe incoming. Well, here we go.
Welcome to America. Tell me what you're thinking.
Just so much.
Kleenexes, please.
I've always been interested in history and the history of Black people. I took Afrocentric classes at U of L. My grandma lived at 2821 West Kentucky Street. I've read so many books, and now I belong to a church that's primarily African American, and I wouldn't be anywhere else.
Beautiful.
I facepalmed the first time I saw that. Of course it's a Karen. Of course. She even looks like one. And as for all those books she read, they probably just talked about who white man bad. They probably never talked about how there was black kingdoms that literally attacked neighboring tribes to grow their territory and then sell the captives into slavery to make money. And of course the Barbary slave trade. The Barbary pirates, they went up and down the coasts of Europe, enslaving Europeans. I bet none of those books talk about that either. They most likely all just talked about the transatlantic slave trade. And the irony there, you do realize you can actually blame the Ottoman Empire for the transatlantic slave trade. Here's how. Why did the Europeans go west? Simple. They wanted to get to India. That's why Indians are called Indians. At least they were. They thought they were Indians. So why didn't they go through Anatolia? Well, that's where the Ottomans come in. The Ottomans, they had conquered and brutally subjugated, colonized the Byzantine Empire. So the Europeans, they didn't want to enrich the Ottomans because the Ottomans, not only having recently conquered the Byzantine Empire, but they're also Muslim. So the Europeans didn't want to empower them through trade, enrichment. So they took a chance and went west. Meaning, if the Ottomans hadn't conquered the Byzantine Empire, there would be no colonization of the Americas. There would be no transatlantic slave trade, because the transatlantic slave trade was on account of the colonization of the Americas, sugar plantations, cotton plantations, etc. And because sailing ships is so expensive, it would be considered a waste to just go west for no reason. So the Americas would have remained undiscovered, probably for centuries. This would have given the natives time to, advance. The left say that a lot. If the Europeans hadn't landed in the Americas, the natives would have advanced in technology. I have my doubts about that. Anywho, in my opinion, the only reason why the Europeans would want to sail west would be just to explore out of curiosity. Would that be beneficial to the natives? Yeah, Europeans might be more interested in studying them rather than, conquering them. So watching that video about slavery and stuff just got me scratching my head. You could blame it all on the Ottomans. But hey, blame the white man. The man who literally tried to abolish slavery while everybody else wanted to keep it. And who were these other people who wanted to keep it? Arabs, Muslims, black kingdoms, and, wait for it, the Turks. And that's the power of brainwashing. Now, I was going to wrap this video up, but there was another instance of brainwashing I recently saw, so I'm going to pop that in too. Here's me pregger woman taking Tylenol because I believe in science and not someone who has no medical background. So in case you haven't heard about this, Trump said something about Tylenol being bad for pregnant women. So now there's a whole whack of pregnant women doing a whole Tylenol challenge on the TikToks just to spite Trump. Yeah, that's how brainwashed they are. I wouldn't be surprised if they're literally chugging Tylenol just to spite Trump. Whereas me, I've known since I was a teenager that excessive or unneeded use of Tylenol is bad for you. It even says on the bottle that it runs a risk of ODing if you take too much, and it might cause liver damage. So anything that can cause damage is really bad for an unborn child. But gotta get that spite in, don't you? Anyway, I think that's my take on this whole brainwashing. At first it was, yeah, I wanted to talk about that Karen woman bloody crying about slavery that she had nothing to do with. But then I started thinking about how brainwashed she was, and then I saw that Tylenol video and I was like, hey, that's brainwashing too. I'll throw that in. Well, that's it for my thoughts on, well, brainwashing. Anyway, take care out there in Clown World.